just like this. Smaller, usually 20 to 25 CEOs. And basically, I just asked them questions. You know, how do you go to market? What's working? So here's what they told me. They said the biggest single problem in small business is this. Sales is, in essence, you heard it today, it's the relentless pursuit of low-hanging fruit. Sales managers are the fastest turnover of any executive in the Fortune 2000. You know that? 17 months. Longevity ain't much of a career. You know why? Sales manager made a commitment to numbers. Management took the numbers to the board. And sales manager missed the numbers. That's what happens. So there's the problem. It is that we are basically scavenging rather than growing our business. That's the challenge that has been ours ever since we began to expand. Think about this. American Airlines in 1979 launched the first Stay in Touch technology-based relationship management program. They called it the A Advantage program. Within 6 months, Crandall said he spent $10.5 million just on the code. Forget the mainframes and all the other they had to buy to do that, stay in touch with your frequent flyer status and to make sure it was your name and your miles and your category and your choices of vacations. Think of that, 79. And I fell in love the day I saw that. I said, that's farming. In fact, the illustration he used, Crandall, when he introduced it to his crew, he was standing on a bare stage, and the graphic came up and it showed a farmer standing on top of a silo looking out at their fields. Think of this, running an airline, the most undifferentiatable product on the planet. How do you differentiate a 250-foot aluminum tube filled with bad seats and no food and mostly late? I mean, how do you differentiate and say that we're the friendly sky? Excuse me. So now ask yourself, is that a limiting factor? Is it that we are constantly pursuing these instant opportunities? And is it because perhaps our compensation, I'm not here to challenge or discuss even compensation, but that seems to be the cause. Everybody, manager, executive, board, have numbers. They promise to Wall Street or somebody. Worst mistake in the world is to embarrass your boss. And so this thing then says, get out there now. Get that business in the house. I don't care what you got to do. Get it in. And we get into those cycles, and pretty soon we think that's the nature of the business. But it's not. Here's the others. They recognize the difference between scavenging and farming is a difference between human survival and extinction. Did you know that? We couldn't have survived as wanderers and gatherers. Humans survived because they understood how to cultivate and stay in one place. Whole civilization is based around this same phenomenon that seems to be impacting all of us and our wealth and our dreams and our families and our future. So ask yourself this question. Are you a farmer? Are you growing and cultivating orchards? Or are you scavenging? Relentlessly searching for that next low-hanging fruit? I mean, that's the basic question. And I'm not trying to tell you either one is right or wrong at all. I'm merely giving you examples that we studied. 14 years worth of study of those who had achieved. Have you ever heard of them? I'm sure you've heard the venture capital guys use the phrase hockey stick companies. Have you heard that? You know, they're talking about growth. They're saying, let's say you're going along for 10 years at about 5 or 6% growth a year. And then all of a sudden in the 11th year, like a hockey stick, you shoot straight to the sky. 10 times growth, 10 times the average of the last 10 years' growth is their classic definition of a hockey stick. Well, of course, venture capitalists are looking for the hockey stick potentials. And so in that vast study that we did, I found almost 150 people like us who had done hockey sticks, legitimately proved, verified. And 50 of those did it straight up. They grew it from the ground up, figured out the soil, figured out the climate, figured out the seeds, figured out the market, figured out all of it before they shot off their mouth. But the orchardist, if you look at the growth, Almost 90% of those hockey stick companies that were searched out, I had a chance to spend about 2 weeks with most of them doing a significant in-depth study of how they did it, what they did first, what they didn't do anymore, all of that. And then, of course, we had the marvelous group at the University of Washington doing the extrapolation and running the database mining in the early stages. But this was the winner. The ones who had that vision of saying, you know, you scavenge an apple off a tree and you might feed yourself for a bite. But you grow a tree and you've created 25 years of progressive, larger fruit and larger crop. Did you know that? Tree is actually bigger. And the fruit is bigger. For 25 years. Problem is, it takes 5 years to get a crop. Do you know that? You don't plant seeds. Johnny Appleseed was a lie. If you're going to make commercial apples, you plant seedlings that somebody else sold you. And then you get to sweat and wallow in the dirt and put out money like it's free for 5 years before you get the first crop. But when that one comes in, pays off the first 5 years of cost totally. No profit yet. But now you got 24 years of progressively growth and basic maintenance. That's the whole concept, I think, between scavenging and orchards. And we all have the choice. I concede it takes technology, and I do not sell technology. We have a small division that designs modules for the CRM business, but I don't have a brand. I have no preference. I'm agnostic. You know, what are you doing? What do you need it for? What's your scope and scale? So here's what they told us. I asked them, I said, where'd you get the money to do a hockey stick? First question, how do you fund it? How do you staff for it? 10 times growth in 1 year, how do you do facilities? That's what we were asking them. So they said, I said, where'd you get the money? Guess where, number one? We're what they called orphans, more often than any other. You know what an orphan is, right? I ain't got no mama. You know, no friend in the business. I'm an orphan. We intentionally create them, you know, with our policies. We allow salespeople to put on one of the great seductions of all time to get the order in the house. And then we command that salesperson to abandon that love and to get on down the road. And I ask people, how do you do that? How do you make these promises of eternal fidelity and then walk away from them? Oh, well, we don't. We have a service department. Okay, that takes care of 10% that normally 10% need help each year. What about the other 90%? Are they sucking fumes? You know, we just can't go there. This stuff is, what we're selling is so complex, so expensive, so mission critical, if you'll allow me generics, that we cannot afford to abandon. In many cases, the first sale is, in fact, the seedling of a true abundant harvest. But we have to think farming, not about scavenging. And so orphans, they were people that salespeople abandoned, not intentionally, usually by command. They had quota. They had a set number of calls and demos they had to make every day in order to stay on the job. Orphans, I sign you up, they're just simply too small for prime time. Do you know the average salesperson in the United States has a territory? Did you know that? Average salesperson has a territory. Not big deals. Average territory in the United States is 150, average, 150 accounts. From big to little. Average salesperson in the United States receives a printout from accounting every year, usually January. And it says, here's your territory. Top to bottom, ranked by revenue. Average sales rep, historically, runs the thumb down to line number 20 or 25, depending on whether they work weekends, and draws a red line across there, effectively abandoning 130 customers. Oh, no, we have newsletters. We'll be in touch. Don't worry about it. I'm not. A lot of birdcage liners made out of newsletters that were done that way. Orphans, 65% of their revenue. Listen, on these two, not one dime came from new business. This was all internal generation. The orphans, all they did was simply identify them and do a bit of microsegmentation, determine what values, what problems, what issues, And they determined they were going to stay in touch, but not as a mass, anonymous from your friends at, but personal communications. I asked these people, I said, how'd they get to you? You got more guards. I mean, Seth Godin said it isn't. Did you read, anybody read Permission Marketing? Remember he wrote that 10, 11 years ago? He said it is impossible to reach you by any means without your explicit permission, not just tacit. A warranty card does not give me permission to dump 20 emails an hour on your desk. You know, Permission Marketing. Anybody read that? Write this one down. This is one you owe it to yourself. I have no connection to it. It's Seth Godin, Godin. If there is a Bible in the concept of marketing with email and on the internet, Seth Godin wrote it. I wish we had hours to discuss some of these giants that we've uncovered. Second category was called slow adopters. Do you know the average lead? The average lead in the United States is dead on arrival. The vast majority of all inquiries are never, ever followed up. Vast majority. This is Sales Management Magazine. They very carefully study this, and as American Management Association does. This is not scare stories. It's just the reality of what's going on. The average lead received by any media is a slow adopter. Hard news. Most leads are not hot at the moment you receive them. What do salespeople dream of? Hot, ready, now? Cash? Excuse me. And yet the leads, the opportunities that we are generating, whatever method, is essentially a slow adopter. And we're handing them over to salespeople who are driven by conclusion, success, harvest. What do you mean feed them? What do they pay me for? They pay me for filling this bushel full of ripe apples. Not because I got 5,000 trees in the ground. Well, those who plan to be here long range do plan. Slow adopters are just simply those not ready to buy yet, and they're awfully difficult for salespeople to persist with these nonsensical follow-up voicemails. Most of us have really never been trained how to communicate with people who don't want to talk to us right now. Right now. And then Seth Godin described them as sneezers, but he's really talking about centers of influence. You know this about referrals? Anybody get all you need? Please? Anybody? You know why we don't get more referrals? Don't ask? Probably right. That's what they teach in all the books. Biggest reason that we don't get more referrals is that we don't deserve them. The study shows all kinds of opportunities that people get into, but the reason that we don't get more referrals is the reason that the people who are most qualified to refer to us can't sell worth spit, and they know it. Your friend is out playing golf with one of their friends, and he's describing a problem that's crippling them, and your brain goes, I know somebody can do that. And then you think, I don't know what that guy does. I just know that the field he's in. Maybe I'm better off just shanking the ball instead of shanking the rim. That's the problem. They have no tools to pass us on. We didn't suddenly teach them how to go out and evangelize for us and teach for us. And so the vast majority then sneezers, and here's the other interesting statistic, only 5% of all of your customers ever will refer to you at all. By the way, fastest way to get rid of one